Today's episode brought to you by Conduit Clothing Company as we move closer and closer to Black Friday, to the Christmas shopping season. Let's just face it, we're already in it. Conduit Clothing Company has some great gift ideas for you, for a loved one, friends in your life. Really checks all three boxes of what makes a good gift a good gift. They are very useful. You're going to want to wear their very comfortable catalog of clothing over and over again. As I've said before, I like their Flex Fit trucker hat. I love the new hoodie that I've gotten as well. Plus, they have a large selection for women as well, like the V-neck t-shirt, the cropped pullover, hooded sweatshirt. A lot of good options to choose from. They are very nice. You're going to wear them. They have a lot of utility. Plus, they're really cool. The Conduit Clothing Company logo is really cool. You want to check those out at conduitclothing.com. And these are the definition of a meaningful gift, because Conduit Clothing Company's entire mission is to get the Bible into as many hands as possible. And you can do that by finding out what it means to be a conduit for Christ at conduitclothing.com. Conduitclothing.com, by the way, use promo code AMUpdate, all one word, get 10% off of your order. Promo code AMUpdate at conduitclothing.com. It's Thursday, November 13th, 2025. The government's back open. Everybody's alive. We're still talking Epstein for reasons, and JD Vance talks about the future next on the AM Update.
On this vote, the yeas are 222, the nays are 209. The bill is passed.
The House passed a government funding package late on Wednesday night that will close out the longest shutdown in history. Members returned to Washington after a 54-day recess to vote on the shutdown-ending bill. 6 Democrats voted across party lines, 222 to 209, as you just heard there. So there it is. Everybody survived. I don't think anybody really won the government shutdown. Yes, I think President Trump's polling numbers probably dipped a little bit, kind of across the board. I don't think anybody won or lost other than President Trump's approval rating. But personally, I said this really from the very beginning. I just wanted to see what a longer, protracted shutdown would actually be like. And you know what? For most people, other than those in recent days who have been trying to fly, I think we did okay. I think everybody survived. The sun came up, as far as I'm aware, every single morning. One, let's call it a benefit for the White House, is outlined here by White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt, who said that the Democrat-led shutdown may actually have broken something permanently for the month of October. Listen to this.
The Democrats may have permanently damaged the federal statistical system with October CPI and jobs reports likely never being released. And all of that economic data released will be permanently impaired, leaving our policymakers at the Fed flying blind at a critical period.
Well, that's rather convenient, is it not? If you're the White House and you've been having all of these issues with questions about the economy and especially messaging on the economy. And hey, wouldn't you know, just so happens the government was shut down and did so in a way that would have permanently damaged CPI. That would be inflation and jobs numbers during a time where it's rumored those numbers are probably not that great. Also not great, there was some mainstream media rag that had another story about Jeffrey Epstein. Apparently, some author was colluding with Epstein to figure out how to get dirt on President Trump, a man who has been on the political scene now, really front and center on the political scene for over a decade. And of course, this time, we got him, honey. We got Trump this time on Epstein. Here's Caroline Leavitt again at the White House.
On Epstein, get this all over with.
So there's a reporter asking a question, hey, why don't you just release the Epstein files, just get this all over with?
This administration has done more with respect to transparency when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein than any administration ever. In fact, this administration, the Department of Justice, has turned over tens of thousands of documents to the American people. We are cooperating and showing support for the House Oversight Committee. That's part of the reason you are seeing these documents that were released today, because of the House Oversight Committee's and Republicans' efforts to get these out to the public.
So there's Caroline Leavitt again at the White House. I'm just sick of this story, and it's not because I think it's necessarily bad for President Trump, for the current administration. It's hard for me to care more about this than the actual people empowered to do anything about it or to tell the truth about it. Maybe it is just a big nothing burger. Maybe there's nothing to it. I mean, that's what President Trump has been trying to claim now. But man, this was built up for so many years, and now it's just being scuttled. Or maybe it's not. Here's House Speaker Mike Johnson regarding a bill that's been waiting around in Congress that would release more Epstein files. He says he's ready for a vote.
What's the reasoning behind bringing it up sooner?
What do you mean?
Rather than waiting for the 7 days from the discharge petition?
Because it's a totally pointless exercise. It is completely moot now. We might as well just do it. I mean, they have 218 signatures. That's fine. We'll do it.
So there's House Speaker Mike Johnson. There's this whole story again. When it was apparently advantageous to Democrats, now they got him. They got him, even though he's been front and center on the scene, and they had a Democrat administration for 4 years. Anything that was salacious, scandalous, law-breaking, they could have hung him with that, rhetorically, or maybe literally. They could have hung that around his neck at any time over the past 10 years, and finally, the year 2025, they got him. Moving back on to the economy and the Trump administration's messaging on economic matters. Here is once more Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
Affordability has two components. So there's the price level, and then there is income level. And what happened under Biden was the cumulative inflation, stated inflation, CPI, was 23%. But what happened to working Americans, their basket of goods and services, food, insurance, auto payments was up in the 30s. So they felt a real gigantic differential there. And what we are going to do is by bringing back high-paying manufacturing jobs, President Trump is going to do what he did in the first term, and that is for hourly workers and working Americans to have real wage increases. So, Brian, imagine two lines. There is the inflation line. We've got that under control. It's leveled out. That is going to start turning down. Then there's the income line, which under Biden, because so many of the jobs were government jobs, you can't get real wage growth from a government job. Real wages are going to increase. Right. And I would expect in the first quarter, second quarter of next year, those two lines are going to cross, and the American people are going to start feeling better. But look, this has been a tough period.
So there is, again, Treasury Secretary Bessent getting into the weeds a little bit there, but bringing it home. I do think now we've got better messaging now multiple times this week from Bessent on the economy. So I appreciate that, because I was very critical of him, as I stated yesterday and last week, of his messaging, where everything's fine, everything's good. Now somebody needs to get that across to President Trump, because what you heard there is, yes, it's hard right now. This is a difficult period right now, but here is a measurable benchmark for when we expect to see things start to get better, and it's next year, first or second quarter of next year. That is good messaging. Now, if it's not better by then maybe, number one, you're just not up to the task. Maybe it's just not recoverable. This economy is just not recoverable, but at least you're providing some sort of benchmark for when Americans can start to see less economic pressure coming down on them. We go now to the MAHA Summit, where Vice President JD Vance, we're going to hear from him a couple of times today, has some thoughts about what it's really going to take to turn the country around in terms of whom we're listening to, the voices that are in the ears of the decision makers, both in Washington and the nation's institutions. Listen to this.
There is no way that this country is going to advance unless we're comfortable with people who are willing to challenge orthodoxy. And that's what I think got so broken, not just about the scientific bureaucracy, but probably it was worse in the scientific area than in most other places, is we've got to be comfortable challenging some of these old orthodoxies. And part of that is welcoming people who are a little unusual, because unless you do that, like, you're not going to solve America's problems with McKinsey consultants who say everything the right way all the time. No offense for the McKinsey consultants, because many of whom are very brilliant people, but like you need the consultant mindset you also need the person who is just thinking about an idea because it's interesting and it's fascinating and it's not being focused on enough in the right way.
So there's JD Vance, Vice President at the Make America Healthy Again Summit. On the context, of course, is health policy. And he is obviously correct. That was laid bare during COVID, that there's just a rancid yet somehow simultaneously stale outlook on the world when it comes to the nation's healthcare policy experts, where there's just so many of them just stuck in their ways, set in their ways for whatever reason. That's just the way all things always have been. They have vested interests. They're bought off, paid off, or they're sellouts in one way or another. And I think that's what Vice President JD Vance is addressing. When we come back, Secretary of State Marco Rubio goes ape on the European Union. John Fetterman talks about the difference between Republicans and Democrats. And somebody close to Gavin Newsom could be heading to prison. It's coming up next. I want to remind you today's episode brought to you by Conduit Clothing Company. Go check out their catalog, if you would, at conduitclothing.com. If nothing else, then just for a thank you for Conduit Clothing sponsoring the AM Update. It's companies like Conduit Clothing Company that if you're a Christian, if you're in right-wing America, you've got to support companies like this. Not just because they have the same values as you, but because they produce some really cool products. Their entire catalog is just chock full of very cool clothing. I've discussed how much I love the Flex Fit trucker hat. I've also worn their hoodie. I've worn their t-shirts. And that evocative Conduit Clothing logo, it's just cool to wear. You want to wear cool clothing, especially if it's from a Christian company. We have to build up that parallel economy because the left already has their own parallel economy. We've talked about that a lot. So would you do me a favor? Go to conduitclothing.com. And while you're there, if you decide to order something, use promo code AMUpdate to get 10% off of your order. Find out what it means to be a conduit for Christ at conduitclothing.com. Conduitclothing.com. Use promo code AMUpdate. The European Union, surprise, surprise, really doesn't like the fact that the United States is enforcing its own borders and blowing up drug smugglers in different oceans and seas. Secretary of State Marco Rubio just demolished the European Union. Listen to this.
I don't think that the European Union gets to determine what international law is. They certainly don't get to determine is how the United States defends its national security. The United States is under attack from organized criminal narco-terrorists in our hemisphere, and the president is responding in the defense of our country. I do find it interesting that all these countries want us to send, and supply, for example, nuclear-capable Tomahawk missiles to defend Europe. But when the United States positions aircraft carriers in our hemisphere where we live, somehow that's a problem. So I would say that the United States is, and this president has made very clear, his job is to protect the United States from threats against the United States, and that is what he's doing in this operation.
All I'll say about that is, once more, JD Vance as the next nominee for the Republican Party is not as fait accompli as I think a lot of people seem to believe. And that's taking nothing at all away from JD Vance. Let's go to this. Senator John Fetterman has a new book out. He was on CNN. Oh, but guess what the name of the book is, by the way? Unfettered. That's very creative, John Fetterman. He was on CNN and was asked the difference between Republicans and Democrats from his vantage point.
You said, quote, "I've drunk deeply of the venom of both the left and the right. As a connoisseur, I can confirm that the most poisonous, the bitterest, is from the far left." That is pretty remarkable to hear you say that as an elected Democrat. Why?
It's just been my personal experience on this thing. And when I asked my digital team, I said, we're on all the platforms. Really, what's kind of the harshest? What's kind of the most personal? And the answer was immediate. He said, "Oh, blue sky. It's blue sky." And the difference is, the right would say really rough things and names. Some names I won't repeat on TV, but on the left, it was like they want me to die, or that we're cheering for your next stroke, or that's terrible that depression won. Why couldn't it depression won? And I hope your kids find you. They even have like the graphic, a GIF where they have like a stroke, in your head, cheering at that. Yeah, and they said that. I remember one. They claimed, the doctor let us down, and why did they have to save his life? Just really, I just can't imagine. People are wishing, I wish he dies, or I want him to die. Literally cheering for a stroke.
Senator John Fetterman of Pennsylvania making those comments about where is the source of the worst forms of vitriol he's on the receiving end of, and he says, blue sky, the haven for the far left. Ladies and gentlemen, that is why they're trying to run this guy out of the Democrat Party. He said things like that. He said that on CNN, to CNN's, albeit dwindling, audience. California Democrat Governor Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff, Dana Williamson, was arrested yesterday, charged with conspiracy to commit bank and wire fraud, among other crimes. It's according to the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of California. In a press statement, the office announced that a 23-count indictment was unsealed Wednesday morning following Williamson's arrest. A federal grand jury charged her with filing false tax returns, making false statements, and participating in conspiracies to commit bank and wire fraud. U.S. Attorney Eric Grant, who announced the arrest, called the charges a crucial step in a 3-year political corruption investigation. He said in a statement, quote, "As it always has, the U.S. Attorney's Office will continue to work tirelessly with our law enforcement partners to protect the people of California from political corruption." Between February of 2022 and September of 2024, Williamson allegedly conspired with others to divert about $225,000 from a dormant political campaign to an associate's personal use. According to court documents, prosecutors claim Williamson and her associates funneled the money through multiple business entities, disguising it as payments for what was in reality a no-show job. Chief of staff is basically your right-hand man in the political, nonprofit world. Or woman in this case, right-hand woman. Like, this is a person who is close to you every single day, either physically or in communication, every single day. It's somebody who you, as a candidate or as a leader, have to trust intrinsically, because you're working with them. Basically, the chief of staff does the actual nuts and bolts of your everyday job. That's what the chief of staff is. It's the most important staffing that you will do. And California Governor Gavin Newsom's former chief of staff was engaged in a pretty insidious public corruption campaign. Wire fraud. That's almost $250,000. Something like that as well. I always wondered, because I've seen stories like this before, where political campaigns will filter money through various businesses that are technically distinct from the candidate themselves, but maybe not. Like, what are you doing actually? What are you being paid these hundreds of thousands of dollars for? I think stories like this actually came up with the Lincoln Project. A lot of work being done by businesses associated with different leadership at the Lincoln Project. So I wonder how common this actually is. It kind of surprises me that in a place like California, this woman was actually caught. And now here's this, going back to JD Vance, who outlines why Americans are so upset in this day and age, and what the challenge for politicians, particularly right-wing politicians, will be in the years ahead. This is about a 2-minute clip. I thought it was really wise. Listen to this.
You want to talk about populism, and you want to talk about people being pissed off. Well, yeah, people are pissed off when they don't have good jobs, and people are pissed off when things disappear and move overseas, and people are pissed off when they feel like, other countries are being prioritized over the United States of America, and all of that is part of the populist resentment of the past 20 or 30 years in American politics. You know what really pisses people off? When they realize that their loved ones are dying much sooner than everybody else. And that is a big part of the story of what's going on in Appalachia and why I think so many people in Appalachia feel left behind. I mean, my story, obviously, it's been, you know, like you said, I'm like the golden boy. Things have just worked out for me in this really incredible way. I feel so lucky and so grateful for it. But I also feel a certain sense of guilt because there are a lot of people who grew up in families like mine who haven't had an easy life and who haven't had all this economic opportunity and who haven't had, you know, a person that they've fallen in love with and they've been able to sort of build a stable, nice family like me and Usha have been able to build. And that gives me a sense of purpose because I want those people to have the same opportunities that I've had. But it also gives me a great sense of anger because we never should have gotten to the point that we are today. And the reason that we have is because of failed leadership, and it's failed leadership over generations. And by the way, these are, you talk about Appalachia, you were talking about people who, though they don't have much, would take the shirt off their back and give it to a complete stranger because that's what you do. If you go back to America's biggest wars, World War I, World War II, Vietnam, which are the counties that filled their draft quotas with volunteers instead of with draftees? It's very often the parts in deep Appalachia where you've got grinding poverty, but you've also got this incredible love of country. So if any place in this country deserves not to be left behind, it's Appalachia. But on the public health stuff in particular, the numbers don't look good. And it's one of the reasons why I'm such a big supporter of what you're doing, because these are people who deserve to live better, healthier lives, but they really have been left behind by this country's leadership.
Vice President JD Vance, once again, at the Make America Healthy Again Summit, discussing the plight of Appalachia and other areas like it in the United States, and really a meta picture of not just Appalachia, but why the entire country seems so ticked off or pissed, as JD Vance put it there. I think there's a lot of wisdom in that, in understanding why America is the way that she is at the moment. And it is very sad, particularly, of course, JD Vance, if you know his story, which I'm not sure who doesn't now. This is personal to him. Yeah, he's been in a lot of different arenas as he's grown up and had a lot more opportunities that he's earned for himself as he's gotten older. But you can still tell in his voice there is some pain. And I don't know how you wouldn't have some sort of pain if you grew up in the way and manner and fashion that he did. So I think there's a lot that we can learn from those words from Vice President JD Vance. And finally, it's time for our poll of the week. I asked you, for the foreseeable future, should President Trump focus exclusively on domestic issues in his presidency? Domestic issues. I left it fairly purposefully ambiguous. So for the next 12 months, let's say 12 months, now until the midterms, focus and message exclusively on domestic issues for the next 12 months. Gave you 3 options. Yes, no, it doesn't. Actually, 4 options. Yes, no, it doesn't matter, and I don't care. In last place, I don't care was at 5.1%. That's good. I'm glad you care. I'm glad you're engaged. In third place, no, President Trump shouldn't focus and message exclusively on domestic issues for the next 12 months at 8.5%. In second place, it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter if he does, doesn't matter if he doesn't. We're kind of we're going to, whatever happens. You could take that a lot of different ways. It doesn't matter. Came in second place at 18%. And in first place, yes, this should be President Trump's exclusive focus. The United States of America and its domestic issues. 68.4% agree with that. Here's what you had to say. Redacted says, I voted it doesn't matter, and people believe mainstream media talking points and average Americans are too ignorant to understand the issues at hand regarding affordability and the economy and all the problems at play. In reality, it should be 90% domestic, 10% international, in my opinion. You know, those are some good points. Yeah, I think the average American, unfortunately, is just not into being a citizen and understanding how things happen over the long haul. The average American, unfortunately, just wants quick fixes, just wants their Happy Meal fast food. in terms of policy. And that's just, I'm sorry, that's just, that I think is just the reality. So I hope you're wrong. I hope that there is some amount of persuasion via policy that can happen here, but I think you're probably over the mark there. Craig Willoughby says, I voted yes, but it probably doesn't matter. Light the Dark says, imagine if I told you we're going to use more power and land that we would use to make ourselves an energy and manufacturing powerhouse, except we're going to produce nothing but hallucinating transhumanist AI slop. Well, that's what's happening, so I guess it doesn't matter. I still don't quite understand how, like, I get the chatbot thing. Sometimes it's helpful. I think we're maybe hitting a wall of how helpful it can be. But I still don't understand in terms of how this is going to be some sort of miraculous, like, second or third industrial revolution, which is kind of the way that it's been painted in a lot of sectors, especially the tech sector. I don't understand how AI is going to do that yet. I don't. I can see how it can boost productivity, but not to the extent that it's going to be some sort of revolutionary phenomenon. I don't understand, and I haven't heard it articulated how that's going to be the case. A to B says, oh, shutter the State Department. Send Rubio on hiatus. Let the chips fall where they may, because that's the essence of yes, focusing domestically on domestic issues. An administration that can't effectively walk and chew bubblegum at the same time doesn't deserve to be in office. Well, I purposely left these as vague as possible, just so it would have the widest variance of how people took those. But I don't think a exclusive focus on domestic issues doesn't mean that you put the State Department on hiatus or Rubio on hiatus. It just means that your main focus, your only focus, is domestic issues. No more messing around in Israeli politics, asking for a pardon for Bibi Netanyahu. No, your focus is 100% on the United States of America, just for 12 months. Scott says it doesn't matter. It's about the results. You can message all you want. It's the actions that matter. He has a team that is pretty good to handle both domestic and foreign issues. Let him walk and chew gum. You know what? That's good. That's a good answer. Ultimately, it is going to be the actions that they take. Now, I think you're maybe downplaying the role of the bully pulpit in forming and keeping narratives. Narratives are important. But ultimately, yes, it's going to be the actions of this administration that people are going to feel or not feel at the end of the day. Gary says, can't print your way to prosperity. There's no appetite for doing any sort of reforms. Best advice I got from an older gentleman who made substantial wealth told me, assets for everything and money doesn't mean crap. I think he's spot on. Gary, thank you for your input and sharing that. That's going to do it for a Thursday. Tomorrow's Ask or Tell Me Anything. You can ask me any question you want. Tell me any news story you think needs covered on the AM update. Maybe there's something breaking in your neck of the woods that needs a larger spotlight. Let me know. Look for the pinned tweet at RealAMUpdate on X. Have a wonderful Thursday. Back at it again tomorrow. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.